All right, we're live. Hey guys, Frank here with TITHE.LY. It is Monday morning again, 9 a.m. Pacific time, coming to you from the home office out in San Diego. And really excited about the show today. Pleasant surprise, actually. We're probably going to cover some things that we didn't originally plan on covering, but it's going to be great for what's going on in the world right now. So I am joined by Tony Manning. Tony, hey, how's it going today?
Hey Frank, I'm doing well. How are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome. And Tony is the executive pastor at Berean Baptist. And Tony, we'd love to hear a little bit about, we like to just start the shows off by learning about the guests. So we'd love to hear a little bit about how you got into ministry, what you do at the church there. Where's the church located? What's your community like? Those kind of things.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been here at Berean since February of 2018. So I've been in ministry for quite a while. Grew up in the St. Louis area, spent 25 plus years in the Indianapolis, Indiana area and doing ministry, pastoring, church planting. Came on staff here a little over 2 years ago to be the executive pastor to kind of oversee our multi-site strategy, leadership development with staff. So that's kind of my responsibilities here. So since about late October, beginning November, we lost our lead pastor. So we are in the south metro part of Minneapolis, Minnesota,
Okay.
so Burnsville. And so we lost our lead pastor first part of November. And so I've kind of been, stewarding the ship, guiding the ship, leading that for a little while with our staff, and have another pastor on staff that helps us with the teaching component of that as well.
Right.
Yeah. And so that's who I am. Got married, have two boys. One's going to be a junior, one's going to be a 8th grader, and we have a dog, and yeah, that's who we are.
Love it. Love it. Well, I have 3 boys myself, and I can hear them all in the backyard right now. I'm not sure if everyone else can hear that, but I certainly can.
I get it. I get it.
Man, well, we originally kind of teed the show up to talk a lot about kind of, giving during the pandemic and during the protesting and all these things. But you guys are you are right near where George Floyd was killed.
Yep.
I think you said you're just a few miles away.
We're about 17 miles south of the epicenter of where he was killed, and where all the the protesting and rioting took place on Lake Street. So
right.
Yeah, so we're not too far from there.
Yeah, it's it's such an intense season. At church, our church here in San Diego, obviously not that close, but there's still protesting and all kinds of stuff going on here. So the past few Sundays, the lessons have all been around these kind of tensions that we can face in the church and outside of the church, and how the church should respond, and how we're going to listen and love and all these different things, right? So we had a great lesson on Sunday. I would love to hear, and I think our community would love to hear, how are you guys handling? How are you doing? How is the church doing? What's it like? How's the church handling this and being a part of the community during this really tough time?
Yeah, well, I'd go back to the first part for us when COVID, I remember sitting with our team on, it was Friday the 13th, and listening to our governor saying, hey, we're going to do this stay in place. And so asking houses of worship, to not meet. And so obviously not knowing how long that would be. Our immediate response is that we put together a response team, a COVID response team. So that we knew that we were going to have people in our community and even in our church who were going to have some needs. So whether that meant, buying groceries, picking up groceries, delivering groceries, medications. We also knew that if people were going to be shut in, that they wouldn't have people to talk to. So we set up where people could, they can go online and ask for somebody to call them to help and have conversations with them. We started letter writing stuff. And so really during the first part of that, for us, it was like, okay, coming out of the season in which we were as a church and losing, our senior lead pastor.
Right.
It would be easy for us just to focus on ourselves and to wallow on what we're missing and what we don't have. But then what COVID did is it allowed us really to focus on the outside. So we set up things where people could, hey, I want to volunteer. I can help, I can give, I can serve. And so we did that instantly and just started gaining traction with people volunteering. Some people who started volunteering who had never volunteered in the church.
And how are they volunteering when this is all social distancing, actually sheltering in place for a moment, right? You couldn't be with people.
Yeah. So basically the volunteer part was they were volunteering to say, hey, I can pick up and deliver groceries to those who can't get out.
Yep.
Hey, I can do the same thing with medications. I could be, if somebody needs somebody to talk to, I would love to, just call somebody on the phone to talk to them and touch base with them.
Yeah.
I would love to be a person that could, pray with somebody, just to have those connections. Cause we realized that, even from a demographic standpoint, that we had some people who were living in assisted living or retirement center villages that people weren't allowed to come in and out. So families couldn't go in to even visit, moms and dads, grandmas and grandpas. So we did that immediately. Even letter writing, we started partnering with some local to start writing letters in cars. So that's the volunteer part of that we had of what that would look like. And so we had people who volunteered to do that right off the bat. And like I said, people who hadn't even volunteered in the church before were signing up to volunteer in that season. And then on the giving part too, we said the thing, I can give. And so we just started seeing money come in that would go specifically to COVID, so we could help pay for groceries or help pay for assistance. And I think today, outside of our normal giving, I think we've probably collected $65,000 to $67,000 specifically for COVID needs. And so our church responded well to that during that season. So then you roll into what we experienced Memorial Day here in the Twin Cities area. And so we, just being focused on the outside and helping people. One of our local ministry partners, Urban Venture, which is literally right off of Lake Street, where in the epicenter of everything that was going on with the protests and the riots, and hundreds of businesses, destroyed, and community grocery stores, gas stations, pharmacies destroyed. And so Urban Ventures that said, hey, here's what we're doing is we're converting our gym into a temporary pantry. And here are some things that we could do. And so we immediately jumped on that, say, hey, we want to support you, partner with you. And so we started last week. We collected some of their other essentials like, baby food, diapers, wipes, cleaning detergents, and all that sort of stuff. And our church responded. We took a whole trailer and van load of stuff down.
Wow.
We gave them $5,000 to help supplement some things that they didn't have. And then next week we'll do the food items. We'll collect food items specifically for them. And so we have the COVID stuff that's, still going on. That's kind of been like, with everything that's been happening since May, it's kind of like, in the background, but we know that there's still needs there. People are, some of our local companies just, had their first round of layoffs last week. And so we know that there's going to be another impact of that. So all that has just happened all at once for us. And so because of how we responded, I think pretty quickly to COVID, it's allowed us then to pivot to help specifically with the racial tension that we're feeling right here in the Twin Cities, and that our country is feeling and the globe is feeling. And so we've been able just to pivot that and to help very specifically with some of those immediate needs that they have.
Yeah. Man, it's like a lot. It's like we can go COVID, we can go. So, but like, let's just stick on, like, how are you walking the church through? Like, what's the makeup of the church? What's kind of the demographics? Just so that the audience understands, what kind of church you're helping go through this season.
Yeah. So, we're in Burnsville. So, like I said, just south of the river, south metro area of Minneapolis. Demographic church-wise, predominantly Caucasian, of European descent, Norwegian descent. We do have some ethnicity in our church, but it's not predominant. And so one of the things that we started looking through a couple of months ago, 6-8 weeks ago, is what does our summer preaching series look like? And so we're actually going through the book of James. And so one of the things that we've just been walking through and talking through immediately is like, hey, James talks about, hey, we need to be quick to listen and slow to speak and slow to be angry. And so we've just been helping our church understand that that in the listening process, it's not a passive listening. It's a listening that's active. And so as we're listening, we can learn, so that as we learn, then we know how we can speak in love to our community and to our neighbors. And so we've been pretty intentional about that, to making sure that we're listening, that we're in the process of learning the stories of our people, not only inside our church, but then also our community. Here in the Burnsville, specifically where our church is located, the local high school, Burnsville, the amount of foreign languages spoken in elementary, middle, and high schools it's in the 20s. I mean, there's a lot of diversity.
Yeah.
And so then we also know with that diversity, there's also some religious backgrounds to that as well that don't necessarily align up to some other religions in our areas. And so there's a complexity to that. And so for us to get through that, we've got to make sure that we're listening. And walking through the book of James is like, okay, so there's faith and works. We say that we have faith. We say that we believe in God. Well, how then are we being the hands and the feet of Jesus to meet the physical, emotional, and spiritual needs of our communities? And so we've just kind of made sure our people understand that this is something that God is bringing us as a church through. And as a reminder, coming in COVID with the racial tension that we're seeing, is that it's a reminder that that's the mission of the church, and people are at the epicenter of that. Yeah. And so how can we listen, and how can we love them, and how can we speak the truth into them? And so that's kind of how we've been walking through it.
How are you guys, just in the sense of listening, listening to the stories of, our Black brothers and sisters, and trying to understand versus, like pretend we understand, or just kind of make these kind of comments that are a little bit off the cuff, but aren't, they're kind of offensive almost. Like you hear a lot of that. Like, how are you helping, the predominantly white church understand the Black community and the Black brothers and sisters and the Black people in your community that you're serving? What you shared a story earlier, so I'm kind of drawing that out. But what are you guys doing to help people really have those conversations?
Well, I think number one is we from the very get-go, from our very, very first statement, once everything started happening for us, is that we wanted to make sure that everybody understood that every single human being on the face of the earth was created in the image of God. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't matter where you were born. It doesn't matter your religion. It doesn't matter your gender. It doesn't matter the race. The real part is that we are all created in the image of God. And that God doesn't play favorites. I mean, James even talks a little bit about that, about favoritism and partiality. And so we just really wanted our people to help them see and understand that, hey, we were all created in the image of God. We are all equal. But in right now with this tension is, how can we, rather than think that we know how people feel or what people think, how can we be more intentional about listening to people's stories? Mm-hmm. So the other day, I had a meeting here late and just walked across our parking lot to go to the grocery store here to just get something to snack on because of the late meeting, and saw two of our staff members at a picnic table having a conversation with a Black brother who loves Jesus, who loves the Lord, who plays in our worship band occasionally on the weekends. And it was just so encouraging because their response was that, hey, we just didn't want to take him being here for granted. We wanted to know how he was feeling and what he was thinking, and how we could listen to his story, so that we just didn't assume that he was okay because he was here playing on the weekends. Right. And so that's the type of the conversations that, hey, we just need to be able to listen to people, because if we can listen, kind of the analogy that I've been using with our staff and with our people is, God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. Maybe we need to listen twice as much as we speak. And so, like the other day, a family brought in some of the supplies for Urban Ventures, and so he's Black and she's white, and I just started asking questions and just listening. So for 30 minutes here in the commons of our facility, just listening to how people have been responding to them, and they've been getting phone calls. Mm-hmm. It was interesting. They've been getting phone calls to see how they're doing. Yeah. And one felt so guilty about not really understanding the situation, that he actually had to go visit them in their house just to comfort them, so that they could understand that, hey, they're brothers and sisters in Christ, and that we're going to get through this. Right. And for 30 minutes, I just listened to them share their stories about how they've been helping their family and their neighbors walk through the midst of this. And it was so encouraging. And literally, I asked like 2 questions, and the rest of the time I just listened. And I was so encouraged, and I got so much insight from listening for 30 minutes. Now I can specifically how I can pray for that family and their ministry in their community. But yet knowing that there's so many people in our communities, in our churches, that their stories are so incredible. If we would just take the time to listen, to see where they're hurting, to see their anxiousness, to see their fear, that it would do us really, really good to listen more. And so that's kind of what we've been trying to help our people understand.
Yeah. No, I love that. Love that. I mean, it's a pretty amazing time. We're all going to look back at 2020. It's probably going to go down in the history books for lots of reasons.
Oh
for
yeah,
19,
absolutely.
for George Floyd and many others, and for the change that is very likely going to happen through all of this.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting to see how, the church around the world, but certainly in the US is responding, and how individual local churches are addressing all of this. And yeah, just appreciate, I think, listening, loving people, seeing how we can put ourselves in their shoes, is the right, at least a step in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I guess going back to COVID, are you guys meeting back in the building?
Yeah,
Or
so
are you-
we did a kind of a dry run service this past Saturday night. So we generally would have one Saturday night service, and then 4 services on Sunday morning.
Yeah.
And then we have our multi-site campus that meets that we haven't been able to meet, obviously, for it'll be going on 15 weeks. We haven't met for 15 weeks in person. And so we've been doing the videotape, we've been doing all that, putting everything online. So this past weekend, we invited our staff and their families, our volunteers through phase 1 and their families, to come be a part of the Saturday night service, so we can walk them through the registration process, how to get people in and out of the doors.
Yeah.
And so we will actually open up to our entire church next weekend, over Father's Day weekend.
Really?
So so it was so we've been working through that last Saturday. There's it was very, very emotional, because people literally, when we were seeing them for the first time, going through the training, and then Saturday night, I was like, oh, you're a real person. You're not, this is the real pastor. This is not the virtual pastor.
Right.
And so then to get into a room where you can hear their voices and you can see them raising their hands, it was just a really emotional evening for us, just to be able to gather again.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I mean, there's also something to all of this, right? As we're all going through all kinds of different feelings and emotions, and, the good, the bad, and the ugly during COVID, and, the protests and everything else that's going on. And we can't meet in person, right? Like you can't, right? Like the church can't come together in person and work through things that way. So it's a whole nother dynamic to working through all this stuff. And what people are, right, like all the things about mental health and the increase in people suffering in that way because they're alone, right? So it's I mean, coming back together, I'm sure, is going to be a pretty awesome morning. So it's this weekend, this coming Sunday.
This coming Sunday. So we'll do our Saturday evening service at 5, and then we've tweaked our Sunday morning services so that we can get people in and out. But so we'll start that this weekend. So it'll be good to be able to see and hear people.
And everybody's coming, or are you limiting size? Are you keeping?
We've been watching and reading lots of different trends from around the country. When churches are reopening and what that looks like. And, a lot of churches are seeing that 30 to 35% of their people coming back. So, we have some space limitations that we've been asked to go by, some guidelines. And so we've put those in place. So, it'd be interesting to see how many do show up this weekend. Right. But at the same time, we want people to feel comfortable. Like I just got a message this morning that said, well, I wish I felt more comfortable to come. And that's okay. We've got to make sure, I think one of the things that we've got to make sure as pastors, as we're working through this and reopening, is that we don't make those who don't feel comfortable coming back, that we don't make them feel less of a part of the body just because they don't feel comfortable coming back.
Right. Love that.
And so, we'll continue to do the both and hybrid. We'll continue to have live services, but then also continue to put our stuff online for our church to be able to participate in. So, so we're about we were allowed to open up 2 weeks ago, but we wanted to fine tune our processes and then also learn from some of our other friends in ministry and churches of how things were going and what to do and things that worked and didn't work. And so we may see a little bit of an uptick because of that, because we've waited a couple weeks extra, but it's really hard to tell, just because there's both ends of the spectrum. Those who are, why in the world did you ever close in the first place? And then the other side is like, why in the world are you opening? And so we're
Yeah.
just trying to, balance between the two of those.
Right. And you get stuck, you and the leadership team get stuck with making the call that
Oh,
has to
absolutely.
please
Oh,
everybody.
yeah. Yeah. Well, that's what I was trying to tell our volunteers who, are going to be a part of phase one, and talking about, well, why can't you do this? And I'm like, well, I could, but then would you just want me to forward you the emails so that
Right.
you can answer those emails? I said, because I already get these emails about we're not doing this or we're not doing that. And so, but it's been from a leadership perspective, you're never going to make everybody happy anyway. So regardless if it was pre-COVID or no COVID or whatever, you're not going to make 100% of the people happy. And so you just got to do what God is leading you to do, and making sure that you put some precautions in to help people feel safe and to take things seriously, but then also understand that there's that we have people that are just longing to, we have people that are just longing to be together,
Right.
just longing to see each other. And so when we finished one of our trainings, people were outside and leaving, but they were in pods of people just talking. And so jokingly, I told one of our other pastors, like, we may have to tell them to go home.
Right.
I mean, we may have to tell them to go home, because they were seeing people for the very first time in person in a church setting for 4 months.
Right.
And so, yeah.
Craving.
So,
have you guys seen
craving.
Have you seen a dip in online attendance? Like,
Yes.
how did that kind of trend? Because I've sort of heard a very similar thing.
Yeah.
For most churches, not everybody, but for most churches, it seems like there was a spike. Everyone got online because we weren't online, and the church responded. And then over time, especially since some of this kind of reopening stuff started, online attendance started dipping. What's it been like?
Yeah. I think, we were pretty amazed and overwhelmed about the digital footprint coming into all of it. And I would say probably the week after Easter is when we started seeing the online interaction decreasing. That's probably Easter was probably the height, and then we started seeing the decline on the other side of that. So yeah, we've seen that for sure.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, I think it just tied into like people want to be in person.
Yeah,
and online starts to wear on you a little bit. It's not the same.
Yeah, and not only that, but it's but if you're working from home, and most of the stuff you're doing is video as well, so you're spending most of your time on a computer or in front of a
all
TV
day.
doing all this
is
all
what
the
I
time.
do all day.
That's all you're doing.
Yep.
And so then you have church and small groups and stuff that we've been able to do with that as well.
Yeah.
You get fatigued from that, and you just need to have personal interaction, and I get that.
Yeah, 100%. Well, let's jump into the kind of giving and generosity side. I think it's an interesting. You've mentioned a couple things about kind of COVID giving and how the church responded to the death of George Floyd and the protests and serving the community. But it's, I think from what I've seen in our church and conversations with leadership, it's a tricky thing to really talk about giving, but know that this time could mean financial hardship for some in the church. And it can be just, a challenging thing. So how have you guys, handled, from when this started up through now, talking about financial giving? How have you handled understanding kind of the needs of the community, and, just talk us through what it's been like for you guys?
Yeah. Well, I think the first weekend, we just had to rush into stuff, and online giving, we have online giving, obviously, and it's done well. It's helped us considerably. So I can't imagine even going into COVID without having online giving.
Right.
And I know that once COVID started, and I know that, just reading and watching things, how many churches literally had to pivot, and then also, come to a TITHE.LY and say, hey, we've got to set something up like right now. And so I'm thankful that we'd already been a part of that for, probably a good year and a half that we were already doing that. So that first weekend we saw, like a significant dip. But then what happened is that people then started mailing in their contributions. So
Right.
over the course of the next 4 days, we started seeing those who were normally giving on the weekends then mail in their contributions.
Gotcha.
And so then we just kind of revamped and say, these are ways that you can give, so you don't have to worry about coming to the church or doing this or whatever. And so we started seeing more. We did see an uptick in people giving online,
Hmm.
first time givers. Actually, even in this whole process, we saw some first time volunteers who haven't been serving before. Now all of a sudden they're serving in some capacity because of this.
Yeah.
But then also some first time givers that started giving through all this. And so it was really cool to be able to see how God was using that to help people understand and see the bigger picture of the giving and the serving component of that. But for the most part, from the time up until now, our giving has, consistently stayed right around the same marks that we were about a year ago. So then when we look at giving, we probably will end up, our fiscal year ends June 30th. So our new one starts July. So we're probably going to end up the year probably 3 to 4, maybe 5% more than we were last year.
Wow.
And that's coming out of, a difficult season for our church and
Yeah.
losing our lead pastor, and then straight into COVID. We're still trending to that 3 to 5% more than we did last year.
Yeah.
So we're thankful for that. And then on the COVID side, like we said, we've probably have raised $66,000 for COVID related items, so that we can meet needs. One of the things that we did, we found out there were some farmers that had pigs, right? This is a crazy story, Frank. They were going to lose all these pigs. And so we found out about that. And so we ended up buying pigs from the farmers to have processed. The processor worked with us on a price. So we purchased like 7,600 pounds of processed pork, so that we then can we pick it up this week, that we then will donate to first responders, essential workers, and to the needs of our community, and to Urban Ventures to help meet some of the needs on Lake Street.
Wow.
And that is all paid for because people gave to COVID. And once they found out what we were doing, they gave more. And then we had people who bought pigs and donated pigs for us to do that. And so just an incredible opportunity for us in a very practical. I mean, it's not, Frank, I talk about this all the time. When I went to seminary, we didn't talk about, how to walk through leadership failure, how to survive a pandemic, and to go through racial tension all within the matter of 10 months.
Right.
And how to deal with pig farmers. None of that was taught in my seminary classes.
Totally.
And, but again, it's just how God has blessed us, and our people see the bigger picture, and they've just been able to give financially to make sure that people in our church and in our communities receive the physical and emotional and spiritual needs that they have.
Yeah. And you mentioned a number of new, brand new first time givers. And, I think when you have things like the COVID relief fund, and you're supporting, someone in the church, and you're buying pigs, and it's turning into this thing, like you give them this new opportunity that isn't just my regular giving because of my relationship with God and wanting to support the church. It's not that, but now there's this extra thing that certain people are going to feel really called by. And so then all of a sudden, I think that makes a difference with the new givers on cue.
I think one of your boys came in.
There's a child. Yes.
Yeah, I think Frank, the other part of that for us is coming through these seasons that you have to be aware of giving fatigue. Right. Because you have, obviously your normal church stuff, but then you have COVID come up, and then you also have people, hey, how can we help the Urban Ventures, or how can we help people in the community that need to help rebuild? And so I think that walking through that, it's more than just, hitting a button and giving a certain amount of money, but it's a discipleship process of helping people understand why we give. And not just because, hey, well, these people need it, but because God could use anybody else to be able to meet the needs. But God is using us and growing us individually and as a church it's a discipleship issue. We've been given so much, so then how can we make sure that we're just freely giving that away? And so that's kind of been the angle that we've approached, as well as helping people understand why we do what we do with that, rather than just say, hey, hit the button because we need money.
Right. Yeah. And I think having these great stories that are local and even tied to, members of the church is a great way for people to kind of feel and see that experience of their giving, kind of see, it's just a different side of giving, seeing how my money is actually in the church tied together are doing something in the community. It's a really cool dynamic that, some churches do, probably a lot of churches, but not every church does that kind of thing really well, like serving their
Yeah.
community with their giving.
And that's why we've made sure that, like as people have been donating stuff, or we had a team take all that the essential items that Urban Venture needed on Friday, and we just took a couple pictures just so that people could see, hey, when you donated this is exactly where it goes, and this is exactly what it's going to. And so it's not just into some account, it's not just into a trailer being, but this is exactly where it's going and how it's having its impact. Because I think that's when you get to the giving part and you go with what Paul's talking about in 2 Corinthians, and God loves a cheerful, generous giver.
Mm-hmm.
And so you talk about you reap what you sow, and so it is encouraging to be able to share the stories, the narratives behind that, so that people are encouraged to see how their faithfulness, obedience is growing something. And and so we just try to make sure that we help our people understand that as we continue to move forward.
And how are you guys being, having empathy, being aware of, there's also probably financial hardship happening to members of your church, right? I forget how big your church is. I know it's a pretty good size. So, there's some people you're talking about giving and they can't give. So how are you guys talking about it in that sense, and showing empathy towards those who are experiencing hardship right now?
Yeah. So number one, we try to make sure that it's a discipleship issue. So it's not a legalistic, like you need to be giving this amount or this amount.
Right.
We've had stories of, boys and girls within our church who, asked mom and dad if they can give the money in their piggy bank because they wanted to help somebody. And so that those have been good. But then also, as we've been walking through the COVID and people giving specifically that fund, one of the things I was pretty sure that I wanted our team to understand is that when that resources came in, that those resources couldn't just go all the way back out into the community, that we depleted that fund, because at the very beginning of COVID, there were going to be some immediate needs. Mm-hmm. But then as COVID continues to linger and go on, that we know that we're going to have people within our body that are going to be losing their jobs. Yep. That they're going to be displaced with some things. And so how then can we make sure that the funds that we have, not only in the COVID, but then also on our benevolent side, how can we help those within our church meet their basic needs and make sure that they're not going without, just because we're so focused on the outside that we forget about the faith family, the body.
Right.
And so our church has done a good job. We've done a good job with that. But then also, just from a benevolent standpoint, our church has been extremely generous when it comes to the benevolent side. Yeah. I think this year, when it comes to benevolence inside and outside our church, we'll probably have given close to $290, close to $300,000 in benevolence to people in our community or inside our church who have some needs. So that's built into who we are as part of our DNA. And so it's not surprising that many people responded to the COVID response to giving, because our church has just been a really generous giving church. Mm-hmm. And so we just make sure that even with the COVID, that we're not forgetting about the people on the inside of our church that have those needs as well. Right. Because we're just now starting to see maybe some of the layoffs and some of the job losses that, because of COVID, has been extended. We're going to start seeing more of that inside the church.
Yeah, the longer term effects haven't hit, they haven't.
Keep coming. Yeah, they haven't.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's not even talking about the mental health side of things that we're going to start seeing more of people, because they've been cut off from the outside world, and they haven't had that communion or connection, and so now they need people to talk with and talk to. And so how can we help them professionally get some help that they need in that season? So
I mean, it's a big deal and a whole nother topic. I think we can go into.
Absolutely.
On the giving side, do you guys talk about giving every week in your sort of live stream services, or however you're doing church online?
Yeah, so we have a spot every week, what we call our host spot. We kind of give a couple of the main key announcements and reminding people how they can be connected. But we always, in every single service, remind people of ways that they can give. Obviously, we're not collecting anything now. We have offering boxes that we'll put up as people come back in, but really trying to direct them more towards the online giving. But we remind them all the time of our website and our app that they can give to and through. So that's mentioned every week. And then occasionally we'll highlight a story or a narrative specifically that's related to the giving. That just keeps that in front of our people.
So you guys haven't shied away from talking about giving during this season. Like it didn't, you maybe tweaked some things, but it wasn't like you kind of backed off.
No. I mean, it's even not being able to meet here. We still give people an opportunity. We mention it every week. Hey, we want to be able to give back to God a portion of what He's given to us. I mean, that's the language, right, that we kind of use. And so it's like, even like if they're meeting in their homes, we don't want them to miss the opportunity to give back. And so we know that that's probably done on a Tuesday or Wednesday through an app, or it's set up for reoccurring giving. But we mention that every single week because we've been given so much. We want to make sure that we're giving back to God to be able to use into our communities, the South Metro and beyond. So we haven't backed away from that.
Yeah. What do you think is going to happen when church is back this weekend on the giving side? I mean, being the executive pastor, I'm imagining you pay close attention to the finances. So in terms of what percentage of giving is digital now versus still kind of an offline, like a cash and check, and what do you think is going to happen? What's your prediction on what will happen once people go back?
Yeah. I think, we will continue to encourage the online option, just because I think, number one, if something were to happen when we can't meet again for a while, or, being in Minnesota, anywhere from November to April, we could get like the blizzard of all blizzards.
Right.
We had to, not have church or whatever. And so we want to continue to help people and see the bigger picture that actually helps us as a church moving forward if they were to do that online.
Right.
And so I don't know our overall percentage. I'd say it's probably maybe a tick over half of our people. Maybe as close to 60% of our people give online. But, some we know that, they don't, technology and the internet isn't necessarily where they have a lot of trust or faith.
Totally.
In. So we get that. So we're still trying to figure out how we can encourage that moving forward. It actually helps us as a church and helps them. Especially the older demographic who, either on the summers here in Minnesota, they'll go to their cabins for a long extended period of time, or they'll go to Arizona over the winter, or Florida over the winter. And so how can they still continue to be a part of that, where they don't have to mail in something, or, hey, I'll settle up when we get back. But so we're just trying to help them and educate them on how it helps us moving forward, on the day-to-day, week-to-week basis, if they were just to engage online.
Right. Yeah, it makes sense. And yeah, you guys have the seasons and everything going on out there. So.
Oh yeah, man, I'm telling you, it's with COVID, happening, and the stay in place happening in the first part of March. Man, if that would have happened like in November, December, where we had to stay inside with all the weather and everything, you couldn't go outside to walk. Like, I didn't know that where I live in Lakeville, I didn't know that many people in Lakeville had dogs. And so you see everybody walking dogs. It's like, I can't imagine that we would have to go through those months where we couldn't get outside to do anything.
Like at all. Right.
I'm grateful that it's been the weather that we've had, the season that we've had it. I've been grateful for that.
Yeah. The family walks, the dog walks, I'm going to go ride my bike, like all of that stuff, you see a massive increase, just in general. Like people like, anything I can do to get outside and not be around people, but still be outside, like I'm going to go do it.
Yeah. And I'm an extrovert. I have ADHD. And so, I mean, I need to be around people, right? That's where I get some energy from. And so, but it's been interesting is because now all of a sudden, you look at people's grass and flower beds, and it's like everybody's got a green thumb now. I mean, everybody's places look great. Dogs love us, right?
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden they're getting 2 to 3 walks a day, and they bicycle industry. It is hard to find a bicycle in any retail store in the South Metro area.
Wow.
They're out. You have to order it online and have it shipped to the store to have them put it together, because there aren't bikes in the stores. Everybody has bought bikes. Everyone's riding bikes now. And so it's incredible, but more people are outside, and you're having more conversations and getting to know your neighbors more during the season. So there's a lot of good things that have come out of these seasons to be thankful for.
Yeah. Well, we're all learning a lot. God's teaching us lessons, and I think we're going to grow a ton in 2020.
Absolutely.
Man, well, Tony, this has been great. I appreciate you taking some time. It's great just to hear how you guys yourself are kind of going through all of these things and serving the community and learning and growing. Man, prayers with all of you.
Appreciate that, Frank.
with the family, with the church there. And where should folks go to check you guys out, see how you guys?
So they can go to our website. It's bereanmn.com. So bereanmn.com. So that's our website.
Okay.
So that's where you can watch services. If you want to partner with us for COVID and things that we're doing with, South Minneapolis and everything that's going on, we'd love to. And obviously go there, and we'd love to be able to have other conversations if people wanted to get a hold of us to, hey, how are you doing this? Or why are you doing this? We'd love to be able to be a resource for people as they're walking through that themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Remind me, what's sort of average weekend attendance, or however you guys measure membership? Everyone does.
Yeah. So I pre-COVID, we probably run in the low 3, so probably 3 to 3,200, somewhere in there. So it'll be interesting to see what those numbers look like once we get back.
And then first part of COVID online, you were doing about 30,000 people were coming to church. I'm sure.
Yeah. I mean, it was it was crazy the amount of people that were streaming stuff online. It was incredible.
Yeah. It's wild.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Super appreciate you coming on. And if you're watching live, we appreciate you guys. Give the show a like. If you're on YouTube, we'd love for you to subscribe. Obviously, as you know, if you've come to a few of these, we've been giving away AirPods. So we will pick one lucky winner, and we announce those in the email. So make sure you're on the email newsletter, and we'll be back next week, Monday morning, 9 a.m. Pacific time. Appreciate you guys. Have a good one.